What's up and welcome back to the channel. So a couple of weeks ago, I actually put out a video talking all about the new iPhone features. Overall, just excited about what those features were and what that meant for the future of filmmaking, especially if you're just getting into it now. But now, I actually finally got my iPhone in, and for the last couple of weeks, I've actually been testing it and actually doing different things with it just to see how well it holds up and if those features are actually worth getting the new iPhone over. So obviously this is from a filmmaking perspective, so I'm just figured I'd gather all my thoughts and give them to you guys because that's why you stick around. Obviously this is going to be just from a filmmaking perspective. A lot of this stuff that I'm going to talk about is mainly talking about the new ProRes features, and I'll touch a little bit on cinematic mode as well. But if you guys want an actual tech review in terms of what the phone specs are and all that kind of stuff, there's plenty of other videos out there that you guys can go watch. I'm not really gonna cover the technical stuff so much. It's kind of the same year to year anyway, just improvements and the phone's now better. But mainly the filmmaking portion of it is what interests me. Right before we jump in though, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button as it really helps me out a lot. Weekly videos go up talking all about filmmaking, editing, color grading, all sorts of stuff. So if you like this video and you want to stick around, which I think you should, then be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button on this video as well, as it helps it out in the algorithm, and drop a comment down below as well. Let me know what you thought. All right, so one of the most important things to me was getting a look at file sizes, and we obviously knew it was going to be an increase, but I wanted to see by how much this increase would be, and then also if that would be worth it given the quality of the files. All right, so just as a disclaimer though, all of these tests that I ran was with the native stock camera app on the iPhone. I figured that's important because if you pick up a phone and you want to use it right away, the stock camera app is going to be one of the main ways you can do that. And also investing in another app, whether it's $15 or $20 or whatever it may be, is not part of the stock phone. So I just wanted to get a good idea of that first. Although later on, if you guys want, I will be testing different other camera apps as well. So let me know if you have any good recommendations or if you use one in particular. Drop it down in the comments below and I may end up taking a look at it later on. So with the test that I did, I was out shooting a couple of things, and what I did was I shot the same clip, the regular H.265 video, then I did ProRes as well, and then I actually tested out cinematic mode too, although cinematic mode, as far as I can tell, is not ProRes. It's actually H.265 video that blurs out the background. So that's essentially what cinematic mode is. It also gives the AI a chance to recognize different subjects within your video, and then you can rack focus between the different subjects. I really wish they would open the ProRes up on that. I don't know if it's a technical limitation, especially since you're working with the AI to recognize different subjects. That may be what it is, but in the future, I'd definitely like to see that in an update. But back to file sizes though, yes, they have increased and they've increased pretty dramatically. Now, I'll put these numbers up on the screen, but about a 20-second clip in H.265 ran about 133.7 megabytes. And then the same length of video off the native camera app in ProRes ran about 1.83 gigs. Obviously, a much bigger file with ProRes. Now, obviously, this means that if you're doing long form content, for example, you're shooting things like narrative work or even commercials as well, and you're planning on using just your iPhone's internal storage, this is going to be very important for you to know. And the file sizes mean quite a few things for you. First of all, you're probably going to want to bump up the native iPhone storage when you get one, if that's going to be your primary mode of shooting. I got the 256 gigabyte model, which unlocks ProRes in 4K. I don't think the base 128 model does. If you're going to be shooting just with this, I would probably look at getting the 512 megabyte at least, or the 1 terabyte if you can swing that. Now, another way to solve this problem is you're going to want to figure out some way of transferring your files to another external media, like external hard drives, for example, and you're going to want to get a process down for this. So you might probably need to bring your computer with you for sure. Make sure everything's charged, have extra batteries for everything or chargers that you can use to charge up not only your phone, but computers and everything else. And then also make sure that you have the external storage in the form of solid state drives where you can quickly transfer all of the files off your iPhone so then you can make room for additional things you need in your shoots. That's going to be pretty important, especially if you don't want the iPhone to be the limitation to slow you down in terms of shooting. If you don't have higher storage, essentially you're just going to have to stop more often to be able to transfer that data off your iPhone. If it's not fast storage, it might take a while depending on how much you've been filming, how much internal storage you have that you've filled up. And what the transfer speeds are between that hard drive and your iPhone. Not necessarily a drawback or a negative. It depends on what your workflow is and if you have the time to wait between shoots. But that's definitely one thing that I noticed, especially since the file sizes are going to get a lot bigger. All right, so file size constraints are actually a problem, but what about the quality? If the quality of the video is worth using ProRes every single time, then the file size constraints may just be something that you have to deal with, but may not be a big deal in the end if you're getting much better files. All right, so I went out and shot these clips, and they're the same, but the left is in ProRes, and then the right clip that you're looking at is just the normal H.265 video from the phone. Now, in bright light, which is this first clip, I don't immediately see too much of a difference zoomed out all the way. If we zoom in, actually, you can start to see a little bit of a difference in terms of quality, especially around the shadows. It does look like more details being retained on the ProRes version. If you bring it into Resolve, you can actually see what that extra data is doing for us, as I can push and pull it quite a bit more, especially when I'm adjusting for the exposure. I'll go through and do a very quick grade at this point on the footage just to add a few more nodes and adjustments, and you can see the normal iPhone video on the right really starts breaking apart pretty fast, whereas in ProRes, that footage does hold up quite a bit better. Let's try something else here and actually drop a film LUT on the footage just to see how far we can really push this out and stretch it. I'll try to do a color space transform on both of the videos first, just to make sure that I can get them to a log profile. And then I'll go ahead and apply the film LUT to both. If you take a look at the resulting images, it's a pretty similar result. It's actually a very similar result to when I went through and graded it by hand. The H.265 video tends to break apart pretty fast. It's definitely not retaining as much detail, especially when you zoom in. And the ProRes footage does have a lot more detail even after quite a bit of push and pull. One disclaimer though, this was shot at golden hour where the lighting is very even, and although we're getting a pretty bright sky, I was able to pull back and get that information. If your lighting conditions really get any harsher than this, then you're not going to be able to recover that, and it will blow out even more. To be fair, that's not really a limitation on the file format as much as it is a limitation on the sensor size and the optics of the iPhone. There's no default log profile, and the sensor isn't going to handle things like highlight roll-off as gracefully as a cinema camera, for example. And one other thing too that I actually noticed, given YouTube compression, you might not even be able to tell a real difference between the two clips that I showed you. Take that with a grain of salt. Ultimately, if you're going to be uploading to YouTube and stuff like that, the file sizes versus the quality that you're going to get out of those maybe not worth using ProRes every time, especially if it's not going to be noticeable once it's going through things like YouTube compression, for example. All right, so despite the drawbacks that I actually mentioned, I am pretty impressed with the ProRes file. I think the iPhone does a really great job, especially if you need to capture something in a pinch, perhaps with no crew or not a proper setup. I think the iPhone does a really great job. Outside of that, if I'm not capturing something seriously related to work, like for example with family things or the thousands of videos of my pets, that I inevitably end up with at the end of the year, then I don't think using ProRes is going to be worth it for things like that. I just think the file sizes greatly outweigh the benefit that you're going to get. The regular iPhone video looks great, especially if you're posting to things like social media, or even if you're just saving it for yourself. So the ProRes really is unnecessary outside of more professional shoots. Zoomed in on my computer, you can tell that there is a difference, but zoomed all the way out, especially when you're watching it on your iPhone or other social media forms, it really doesn't amount to that much of a difference that your eye can visibly tell. It did retain detail a lot better, and it held up a lot more to the changes I was making to it on the ProRes file. But once again, if you're putting it through something like YouTube compression or social media compression of any kind, then the difference really isn't going to be that noticeable. Overall, in conclusion, I would say if you're ready for an update and this is one of the features that interests you and you know you're going to get use out of it, then I would say it's definitely worth it. Now, counter to that, if you're not going to be using these features in a pro setting where you're actually concerned about the lighting and getting a good shot to begin with, this feature probably isn't worth the premium of upgrading over the regular iPhones. So I would say if you don't have use for this feature or you think you're just going to use it in like daily videos, I would probably just stick with the regular phones for now and save yourself a couple of $100. I'm gonna probably continue using it in my regular videos and my workflows, but I don't see it taking over my actual camera or a legitimate camera with a bigger sensor and actual interchangeable lenses. If you enjoyed this video though, don't forget to give it a like, comment down below and let me know what your thoughts are on this iPhone and whether you think that this feature could be something that you would use in your videos or if you think you're probably just gonna pass on this one. And if you do and you wanna pass and you don't think it's that great of a feature, that's okay. It's really up to you and whether it works for your workflow or not. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well, and until next time, go out there and create something. A lot of it.